So often we think that summer is really the only time of the year that we can be buying locally grown food or eating homegrown food. But in fact, you can be eating homegrown or locally grown food year-round. And in today's video, I want to talk specifically about spring foods or spring season foods and what you can buy or grow to be able to eat locally at this time of the year. Hey, I'm Nadia at Embracing Harvest, where I talk all about eating local and seasonal foods. So if that interests you, hit that subscribe button below. Eating with the seasons is such an amazing thing that we can do, both for our health and for our taste buds. When we think about seasonal eating, oftentimes we think about going to summer and thinking about farmers markets and stuff like that. And that's a great time to eat local food, and that's a great way to eat local food, absolutely. But you can actually be eating seasonal, locally grown food year-round, even if you live in the north. I live in Canada and I can eat locally grown food year-round if I just know what to look for and adjust my diet a little bit. So today I'm going to talk specifically about spring foods, and I'm going to give you my 5 favorite types of foods that I like to eat in the spring. And if you want to learn more, or if you want more than what I give you today, I do have a guide down below that talks all about seasonal eating, not just about spring, but about all 4 seasons and the types of foods that are available in each of those seasons. So if you want more than what I'm sharing in this video, absolutely go down and download that. The link is in the description below. The first food I want to talk about is asparagus. It's a pretty classic springtime food. I think a lot of us, when we hear the word asparagus, we do associate it with spring, but it's a pretty awesome one, so I did want to mention it here. Asparagus is wonderful. You know, you can make soups with it. You can my favorite is honestly just taking the stalks, sauteing it in a little bit of water or just blanching it quickly, and then drizzling some lemon juice on top with a little salt. Oh my gosh, it's so good. That's probably my favorite way to eat asparagus, but there are so many countless ways to eat that food, and it's such a classic in the spring. If you are thinking about growing your own food, asparagus is wonderful because it's a perennial. So you plant it once and you have to wait a couple years. So you have to have a little bit of patience at the beginning, but once you do get some crop out of it, you will have asparagus in your garden for years to come. 20 or more years this plant will last. So it's pretty cool in that regard if you are thinking about growing your own food. Just need a little patience at the start. The next vegetable that I want to highlight for spring specifically is radish. And radish is another one of those classic spring vegetables. For many years, it was the first thing that ever came out of my garden. And unlike asparagus, it's actually quite different in that it is very fast. So with asparagus, you have to wait a couple of years until you actually see your first asparagus crop or measurable asparagus crop. With radish, you plant it in the spring, and a couple of weeks later, you are able to eat radishes. So pretty cool in that regard. You do not need as much patience, absolutely, for radishes, but it's one of those perfect classic spring foods. And I actually put together a video just recently on what to do if you have too many radishes. So check that out if you are interested. I'll have the link down below. But radishes, I mean, it's such a sort of fresh, bright food that you're really craving, I feel like, again, after that winter of heavier food. So radish is perfect to kind of offset that flavor. The next common spring vegetable that I want to talk about is spinach. So another classic. My first 3 are pretty classics. The next 2 are not so much. But spinach is wonderful. It's one of those things that you can get in the ground really, really early. Pretty much as early as you want, as long as you can actually get into the soil. So whether you're growing it yourself or you're buying it from a local farm, it's one of those foods that you will see very, very early in the season. The 4th vegetable that I want to talk about today is sorrel. And sorrel is one of those less common vegetables. In fact, the first time I ever ate sorrel was when I grew it from my own garden. So I'm actually crazy like that. I like to grow things that I've never even tasted before. I do it all the time, especially with fruits. I have never tasted some of these fruits until I actually waited a few years in my own garden and actually got to taste them from my own plant. But that's just me. Anyway, sorrel though is fantastic for a spring garden. It's a perennial. It'll come back every year. Just check that the plant matches your growing zone, obviously. But it's one of those amazing foods because it comes really, really early in the spring. In fact, I see my first sorrel coming up out of the ground about a month before my last frost. So for me, that's end of March. I'm already seeing sorrel coming out of the ground in my raised beds. And sorrel is great in things like soups. That's a classic. I'm actually going to be putting together a recipe for sorrel soup in the next couple of weeks, so I'll link up to that when it's up. But it's a wonderful vegetable for the spring. So if you haven't already tried it, or if you have and you never thought about growing it yourself, it's a wonderful option for the spring. And the fifth spring food that I want to talk about today is rhubarb. Rhubarb is one of those classic springtime foods. And even though it's actually a vegetable, we usually treat it like a fruit. And it's wonderful because there aren't really any other fruits at this time of the year, at least not here in the north. So having a vegetable that I can treat like a fruit is a lot of fun. So you think about things like rhubarb jam or preserves, rhubarb pie, of course. And I actually like to make, my favorite thing to make with rhubarb is a drink. And I'll probably be putting together a video on that because it's just too good not to share. So I'll be putting together that soon. And again, I'll have that link up when it's here. But rhubarb is great because it's really early in the spring. You can force it to come up even earlier than it would have otherwise come. It's a fantastic option for this time of the year. So what you'll notice about a lot of these springtime foods is that they have sort of that same flavor combination to them. They're either astringent or bitter or a little bit tart, and that's actually intentional. When you start to eat with the seasons, you really are working with what nature is telling us to be eating at each time of the year. You think about winter being really heavy. We eat a lot of roasts and we eat a lot of soups and sort of thicker meals. Even if you're a vegetarian or a vegan, it's still more hearty foods. And a lot of these spring vegetables help to cleanse the body, get rid of it using our liver and our kidneys and just flush it. Sort of think about a little bit of a detox naturally at this time of the year, just by focusing on some of these spring foods. So that's, again, one of my favorite reasons to eat with the seasons is that we're just naturally doing what our bodies want. And it's completely tailored to where you live, because if you focus on what's in season in the spring, and when I say spring, I mean when spring is for you, not necessarily when it is on the calendar. So for me, in southern Canada, spring is very different than spring would be, so let's say in Florida or in California. So you really want to think about when you're seasonal, it's thinking about what the climate is like in your area. But focusing on eating with the seasons is amazing for our health. And when you eat food that comes fresh from the earth at that time, especially if you bought it locally or if you even grew it yourself, you are really getting the maximum taste even and the maximum nutrients out of that food. So if you aren't already eating seasonal food, it's a great thing to try to introduce to your diet, even just a little bit. You'll be amazed at the difference in what food tastes like, and also hopefully see some amazing health benefits to go with it. So if you want more ideas on what's available in the spring, check out that guide down below. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I talk all about local and seasonal eating. So hit that subscribe button if you want to learn more. But otherwise, I will see you in the next video.